and then hey, you're being made famous right now, even as we speak. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this stuff right here, and I don't believe I'll ask a Jolly Rancher question just yet because we were just now, reviewing stuff. But we've got this balance between our individual liberties. The government's got to strike a balance between individual liberties and the public interest. All right, so as you've noticed, we have Mr. McDade with us. Everybody say, hey, Mr. McDade.
Hey, Mr. McDade.
And so he's talking about Vietnam and the U.S. history classes, but we'll ask him to weigh on. Everybody be weighing in on all our issues, including Mr. McDade. So we're starting with racial profiling here. And so since 9/11, that's been an issue for folks of Middle Eastern descent. If they're at the airport, they're concerned that the authorities are kind of eyeballing. Here's our Jolly Rancher question. What child of a very famous person has been detained twice? Boom! All right, Hannah was first. She got it first. I don't want to give it to Hannah. Hey, I agree. I do not want to give it to Hannah because she's holding out. She thinks college is more important with bowling than bowling is, and what kind of freaking priorities is that? But I'll still give her a Jolly Rancher out of a warped sense of fair play because she did beat everybody else. All right, but yeah, Muhammad Ali's son has twice been detained at airports, in the last couple of weeks.
Even Mr. McDade knows that I got that first.
He told me, that I remember that Drew guy from last year. He claims he gets the answers first all the time. Don't pay attention to him. I said, you're right, I won't. So that's an issue. What's the story? Once upon a time, I was flying out to California in the year 2005, somewhere around there, 2006, kind of the height of the war on terror. And so I got to the Atlanta airport, going to see Cousin John out there in California. And as we're walking through the Atlanta airport, what recordings all over the place? Look out for suspicious looking people. So nonstop while I'm walking through the airport. Then I get to the terminal, waiting to get on the plane. And President Bush is on there. And he says, war on terror, war on terror, war on terror. It was a speech, but it's like terrorism. So it's nothing but terrorism in my mind as I'm getting on this plane. Okay, so I was a little nervous getting on the plane, so then our tickets were on the back of the plane. Well, to the front of me, to the right of me, and behind me were folks of Middle Eastern descent dressed in traditional Muslim clothes. And in my mind, I profiled. I started getting nervous, and I was like fussing at myself for doing it. That's not right. You shouldn't be doing this. But at the same time, I was kind of nervous. And right before I had flown, there had been a terror suspect arrested, and he had gone to the bathroom and then tried to blow the plane up from inside the bathroom. He'd had the bomb in his sock or his underwear or something like that and tried to blow up the plane. Well, the guy right next to me gets up and goes to the bathroom. And so again, now, I was right in front of the bathroom and I heard gas, and that sort of thing coming from inside the bathroom. And so I relaxed a little bit, and then he came out. And he was clearly not feeling very well, and I felt bad. But that was and was an issue, and I experienced it myself to an extent. All right. Well, also ever since 9/11, shortly after 9/11, the war on terror started, we've had Guantanamo Bay. I've already sent it to you. You're going to watch the front line on Guantanamo. I'm going to watch it tonight too. It's very recent, February something or other. President Obama, one of his first executive orders was to close Guantanamo Bay. So he signed it. Hey, it's still open. President Trump is very pro Guantanamo Bay. And so Guantanamo's kind of in the news right now. 60 Minutes interviewed a guy who had been in Guantanamo this Sunday. I hadn't seen that either. So we'll watch it and we'll see what we think about it. Hey, what amendments are kind of coming up? So these guys have been held for 10 years or so without a trial. At least 2 amendments, I would say. Speedy. What number is Speedy? 6.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
8, 7.
Cruel and unusual punishment's coming up. Equal protection of the laws. What's that?
81.
States is the 14th. National government is the 5th Amendment. No, you're right. Equal protection, that's 14th. Due process is 5th. Okay, now, here, let me ask you this question. Because our issue is balancing individual liberties with the public interest. So we're going to count these guys. There's 10 guys here. Just like, hey, 3, 6, 9, 12. There's 12 of y'all, 10 of these guys. Let's say that this guy, now none of them have had a trial, by the way. Why do they not have a trial? According to the Bush administration, why not give them a trial?
Because it's not on US card.
Evidence obtained is inadmissible.
It probably might not get convicted. So it might get found innocent, not guilty, but they might be terrorists. So if they get found not guilty and they turn out to be terrorists and they blow something up, well, then everybody pays the price. Especially because some of them, the reason we think some of them might be in on something, the evidence against them was illegally obtained, enhanced interrogation techniques. So the evidence would be thrown out of court using normal court proceedings. Okay, so for those reasons, they had a trial. So you got 10 guys being there for 10 years or so without a trial. So I'm going to tell you, I'm hypothesizing that these 2 guys are not guilty. And these 8 guys are guilty. I'm just taking those 2 numbers. So the question is, and you're going to turn to each other, should they all get a trial? All 10 of them. So you can't just find the ones that look kind of innocent to you. You're going to have to give all 10 of them a trial in order to determine that these 2 guys are not guilty and shouldn't be there. All right? Turn to each other. How many of y'all are going to give them a trial? To save the 2, you're going to give them all a trial. In which case, some of them might get off.
Yeah.
That'd be fair. What are they gonna say? Like, oh, you just thought they were? Because they actually blew up the place.
Okay, here we go. Interesting. Okay, how many of you are going to give them all a trial? Oh, look at that. Oh, my gracious. Okay, let's change our numbers then. Let's say that one of them is innocent and 20 of them are guilty. How many give, or 19 of them, how many give him all 20 a trial, knowing that some of them, let's say that
All of them.
50. How many people are at Guantanamo?
If one person
Some
goes
like
to trial,
Yeah, I think the number's 80 or 90. So I'll go all the way up to 89. One person there is not guilty. 89 are guilty. So you're going to give them all a trial knowing that, 10 or 20 of them are going to get found not guilty, get released. How many of you? You're going to give them all a trial.
wait, 10 or 20 of them that are guilty are gonna be
Just
found not
fake the
guilty?
one guy's death.
And then they're all gonna blow up
Every single time.
That's a
there's
great
trial.
You should just fake his death, the one that's innocent, fake his death.
Based on, regardless of, even if there's a small chance that one that you think is innocent might not even be that innocent.
Yeah,
The
if
fact
they're
to
gonna
keep-
get out, yeah. if they're
You
gonna get
have
out.
to keep everyone's rights in check, and if you start drawing lines in the sand with, well, if there were 2 people here, then maybe it'd be okay, you get on a slippery slope, and you just start dehumanizing people based on them, who knows where they were, why they even got picked up.
Very interesting. I'm not weighing in. The only thing I'll say is yesterday's class didn't say it that way. Very different answers than I was getting from yesterday.
You have to protect civil liberties.
Okay. The Patriot Act. Also during the Bush years was used to wiretap those suspected of terrorist activity during the war on terror. All right. Now, so then the question is, how did you get suspected of terror activity?
Wasn't it reasonable?
You send an email with the word bomb.
Yeah, like
Gun.
flags went up in like the email.
Flying to a country that
Might have the wrong last name. Might have the same last name as a terror suspect. You might be involved in. There were college kids that were in seminars on terrorism, and then on the Google search or whatever it was. For that reason, their name would come up, and they get on the list. At any rate, people ended up on the list of that were getting wiretapped, that if you knew their individual situation, you'd say, no, this is really not somebody that we ought to even suspect of terrorism. And so, I mean, that was the basis of the criticism. And it was kind of Exhibit A for criticism of the Bush administration during the War on Terror. Now, Bush's response was, look, I've got to protect the country. We can't have another 9/11. This happened on my watch. If, in the name of protecting the United States of America from another big terror attack, which would be however big next time, certain civil liberties have to be sacrificed. And the last time, anytime, he's getting iceboxing. Put it on 0. The last time we went, I don't know where we went, but the last time we flew, Dr. Thompson and I flew together, and so we went through the little metal detector thing. And they're kind of looking at, and hey, what else do you got? When you fly, what else you got to do? You got to take shoes off, you got to put all the stuff in then it goes to the metal detector. That's right. So we go in there, anytime we fly again, and Dr. Thompson starts saying, civil liberties, civil liberties, civil liberties, and start moaning and groaning. And I'm like, but the whole issue comes up. So it's safety versus your civil liberties in that case as well.
Is more different than going through metal detector to see if you have a gun.
All right. Next, the exclusionary rule. And it's the same principle. So the exclusionary rule says that it's about civil liberties. Illegally obtained evidence can't be used in court. And in the court case, and you might want to put your court case down if you find it. Maps are going to be on there. Number 11, Map versus Ohio. All right. So, hey, Jolly Rancher, anybody who read about the Map case, what happened?
They tapped his phones and heard him saying some stuff, and it ended up not being something like that.
It wasn't a terror case. It's a lady. All right, her name was Valerie Mapp, and she was suspected of harboring some fugitive. Some guy was a killer. They thought he was staying at her house. So the police got a warrant, and they came with the warrant to look through her house where the guy wasn't there. But what was there?
The murder weapon.
Obscene materials. So we said last time that obscenity, it can be used as a regulation on free speech. The book doesn't go into any detail at all on what the materials were. That's a good thing. It's the principles, not the details of it. But they found those things, so they arrested her. They threw her in jail. So then she sues, and she said, or her lawyer said, hey, the police did not have a warrant to look for obscene materials. And so for that reason, the obscene materials, the illegal stuff that they found, whether it was that or drugs or whatever, can't be used against her. And she got set free. And so the argument that folks, and it's kind of every episode of Law and Order, that Lenny, the detective, will kind of he'll bend the rules a little bit because he kind of feels like he knows who the bad guy is, knows the bad guy's guilty. So somehow or another they cheat just a little bit to make the arrest. And then the lawyer comes along and says to Jack, the lawyer here, Jack, motion to suppress. Lenny wasn't supposed to get the evidence this way, and then the whole thing falls apart. And so Law and Order are kind of concerned that the exclusionary rule is making it impossible for the police to do their job. And so the court case is Map versus Ohio. Now I asked a policeman about it. When I was at Gordon Central, we got, policeman here, but the officer there at Gordon Central, he came and talked about his job as a policeman. State and local government was one of the standards we had to cover in that government class. So he talked about his job as a policeman. I said, well, what about this exclusionary rule? And he said it wasn't a big deal. That you got a warrant to, you think somebody's got drugs. and you go in there with a warrant for the drugs, and then you found a murder weapon. Well, what you can do is you can put them in cuffs, and your partner sits there with them while you go back to the judge and get a new warrant, then you come back. So according to him, it doesn't make the police's job that much harder. But this was during the 60s, and in the 60s, the perception by conservatives was that the Warren Court was making things easier, too easy on the criminals, too tough on the authorities. All right, and there we go. So you've kind of already answered question number 2 there. So you have 4 questions, so I will give you 20 seconds, 5 seconds per question. Turn to each other and answer those questions. Let me mark a second.
Wiretap, because they are associated with, wait, which one are you in?
And I'd say number 1. So you're down to 3. You know, these 3 right here.
Picture of wiretapping, yeah. And it was besides because they were wiretap. Legal or didn't need to be.
And time. Via, what about the Patriot Act? Tell me about it.
Wiretapping people who are suspected of.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Meg, what's the exclusionary rule?
You can't use illegally like obtained evidence.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened in Matford, Ohio?
The exclusionary rule.
Yeah, the exclusionary rule happened. They were looking for one thing, they got something else, they arrest her. Court said they can't do that.
Is it map with 2 P's or map with 1 P?
I think it's 2 P's. And I think her first name is Doll Reed. That's kind of unusual, not Dolly, but Doll Reed. Mr. McDade, you're a war veteran. What about Guantanamo? What do you think of it?
I think all of them need to be tried. I don't going on with the procedure they're trying to say now for the simple reason is my point is what suspicion did they have from that in the first place? They got evidence that they could be whatever they got them there for. So why not give them a court trial to prove it they're innocent or guilty?
Okay, so we seem to be kind of unanimous in here today, surprisingly so. So let me bring in a conservative argument, something that the other class would have said. Hey, there's several stories coming out recently, concerning Guantanamo.
That they joined ISIS.
Yeah, somebody got released, then they blew something up. Does that change your opinion? You know, the person getting released might blow something up. Yep.
Being in Guantanamo probably increases the risk of terrorism just because the means to get the evidence, etc., are through things like torture and waterboarding, which increases like anti-marriage and like sentiment in the first place. So like obviously, I mean like I'm not supporting terrorism clearly, but if I was like tortured for 10 years, I probably wouldn't like the United States at this point. Therefore, like we should just like shutting down launch or like not even like shutting down, but like giving everyone a fair trial would lessen that risk.
So there we go. Hey, what we say in Vietnam? Destroy the village in order to save it. So we were trying to help out the South Vietnamese, and there would be some Viet Cong in a village. So what do? Burn down the village. Well, what effect does that have on the other folks who might have been on our side at that particular time? So, you know, the effect of these that these techniques have on, you know, the folks are trying to influence is questionable. Okay, here comes death penalty. Number 2. Okay, let's go down here. Let's see if we give a Jolly Rancher away.
I like this.
All right. Anybody got anything? I got 2 Jolly Ranchers.
Illinois governor's concern was the death penalty.
You see what he did there. So this is very clever. Mr. McDade said, "Oh, is this the one?" When I told him y'all coming, I said, hey, "That's the one with Sosa in it. He's clever." And I said, "Yeah, we gotta look out for him." Okay. Well, hey, anybody got anything specific?
Furman versus Georgia.
It's against the death penalty.
The death penalty
Yeah.
is allowed.
They sued him over the death penalty
Look at his face.
after he died because of death.
Got any specific guess?
Oh,
I think it was in Reading.
firing range, hanging. I
Was
don't
it
know.
like
Firing squad.
talking about the death penalty, like you know, immediate because if it's not, then it's like cruel and unusual.
Furman took away the death penalty and Greg brought it back. Furman took it away because he didn't die. There was like a little mess
It
up.
brought it back.
That's happened
Well,
before.
Okay. Let's see. So we will get to those two court cases on the next slide. All right. We got our Bill of Rights from the English Bill of Rights. And the English Bill of Rights included a prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. And other forms of torture. As response to the rack and other forms of torture, what does the rack do to you?
It twists your arms.
It stretches you out till your bones break. Breaks all your bones. And so the English, over time, decided that that was cruel and unusual punishment. In like the English Empire, when we got our Gandhi story prior to Gandhi coming along, if somebody over there would do something really bad, the English would bring an elephant along and squash their head. I mean, there's all kinds of awful and cruel and unusual punishments, kind of used by the English. And so our Bill of Rights is in part a response to that. In the late 1800s, American courts ruled that it was not, the death penalty wasn't cruel and unusual punishment. And it has never been ruled to be cruel and unusual punishment. For our entire history, there's never been a court case saying that the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment. Now, the level of support for the death penalty varies. Look at my little graphic. When is support for the death penalty high? When is it low?
When there's a lot of crime, it's high.
Yep.
There's not a lot of
So liberal days during the 60s was really low, and in fact, about 1967 there is the 1 year where the opposition to the death penalty was higher than support. But then you got the crime wave, late 60s, late 60s, 70s, 80s. So at that point, when the crime's really high, support for the death penalty is really high. And then in recent years, it's kind of fluctuated, gotten a little bit less than that as crime's gone down. All right, so support kind of fluctuates. Okay, here's our court cases. So Furman, if it's a Texas court case, has to do with some kind of cultural issue, either sex kind of stuff, abortion, homosexuality, or flag burning, those kind of hot button cultural issues that folks get fired up about. If it's in Georgia, it's a death penalty case. Both are Supreme Court cases that took place in Georgia were death penalty cases. So, and they both involve the death penalty of African American defendants. So in Furman versus Georgia, the NAACP, remember the NAACP goes through the courts, and they were able to demonstrate that black defendants convicted of the same crime were more likely to get the death penalty than white defendants were. And so for a very short time, I'm going to say a year, certainly less than 2 years, the death penalty was not allowed anywhere. Late 70s, 1978, 1979, somewhere in there. We had a moratorium on the death penalty. So a year or two there where nobody got the death penalty. All right, but the court ruled because it was discriminatory, or it ruled that it was discriminatory, but it was not cruel and unusual punishment. Still wasn't cruel and unusual. So if no class of people is more likely to get it for committing the same crime, you can bring back the death penalty. So within a year or so, and the court case was Gregg versus Georgia, states were allowed to bring back a death penalty if they were able to demonstrate that no class of people was more likely to get the death penalty than another.
So it used to not just be based on crime, it used to be based on however the judge felt.
How he felt like you were a threat to society.
The judge
No, I mean, in about the 70s, the only thing you were getting the death penalty for would be a murder. But juries in the sentencing phase had been more likely to give the death penalty to an African American convicted of murder than a white person convicted of murder. And so, Gregg versus Georgia says the states are going to write their death penalty laws to make sure that doesn't happen. What fraction of states have the death penalty?
3/5.
Yeah, about 2/3. So more than half. Some of the more liberal states don't. Okay, Today the issue is less so whether it's not whether or not it's discriminatory, and it's really for the most part not whether it's cruel and unusual. it's whether or not you're getting the wrong person. So increasingly, on a fairly regular basis, you have somebody convicted of murder and sentenced to death, and then new evidence comes out, turns out they're not guilty, and they let them go. And that happens on a fairly regular basis. What has happened a couple of times, and used to happen, during the, Gilded Age, the Jim Crow South, lynching was a regular thing, and somebody would be executed with basically no evidence whatsoever. So executing innocent people was a regular occurrence in the late 1800s, in the Jim Crow era. But in recent years, you've had 2 or 3 executions where after the execution, evidence comes out that seems to, at the very least, call into question the guilt of the deceased. But at that point, it's too late to hear the evidence. They've been executed. So for that reason, in the year 2000, a Republican governor of Illinois, who'd always been pro-death penalty, didn't see the death penalty as cruel and unusual punishment, but was concerned about executing innocent people, put a moratorium on the death penalty, suspended it in Illinois for a time, because he was worried about that. And the thing that the courts are doing to ensure that you don't have wrongful executions is using DNA evidence. And so we become more confident. And a lot more people are getting let go, being exonerated because of the DNA evidence. That's kind of where the death penalty has been. I didn't get on the slide. You got one more turn. If somebody gets death penalty today, what form does it take? Lethal injection. Why lethal injection? Seems like the least painful. However, what kind of stories are coming out of lethal injection stuff?
Like the wrong amounts or something.
Yeah, the states have budget constraints, so they buy cheap drugs. They outsource, the drugs. So they're importing the drugs from the poison from some other country, and then you got the story of the guy, somebody twitching. What's supposed to happen is it's supposed to basically kind of put them to sleep. So they're paralyzed and their eyes closed, and then the next injection shuts down their organs. And so we don't know. It could be we basically put them to sleep, they don't feel a thing, and then they're just dead. Or it could be we put them to sleep, and it hurts a lot, but because they're paralyzed, they can't scream, and so, we just don't know. But with the new and cheaper drugs, the guy's in pain because he's twitching around and he's saying things and he's gasping for breath. And so the ACLU sued this time and saying this is cruel and unusual punishment when the guy's switching around and it's taking, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes for him to die. But of course, the Supreme Court ruled, no, it's not. But that's the issue with the lethal injection right now is we just don't know how painful it is. And also on a fairly regular basis, their person ends up dead, but after a long time and after a period of time where clearly he's under a great amount of stress. Ironically enough, so here's a strange question for you. If it's you, they're going to execute you. What's the best way? How do you want to go?
Firing.
Yeah, firing squad. And so they got, the last firing squad was Utah 10 years ago.
Doesn't matter.
Seems to me to be the least cruel or unusual. 10 people shoot you with a shotgun, you're dead. And there's not a lot of suffering going on. But nobody does that. And so this lethal injection is where it's at right now.
It would be cheaper.
It would be
to do
cheap.
Firing squad. It doesn't matter if you buy a cheap box of shells.
That's right.
Still gets the job.
Okay, hey, turn to each other, tell each other, answer all those questions, and we'll take our death penalty survey. And you got 15 seconds, all pretty easy.
Isn't there like a dude in Texas who he was going to be hanged? And but he got so the rule is it's only cruel and unusual if their head comes off. So he got really fat, fat enough where if he got his head ripped off. So he was just like
Yeah, the guy put on a lot of weight,
It's not that, he's dead.
That's a Jolly Rancher.
We go down and get us a lunch.
I don't know.
Just go get us a lunch and then I'll pay you.
Right now?
Yeah, you're right. All right, one lunch. One lunch. And bring, sweet tea.
What does he want?
Mr. Dave, what do you want for lunch? You know, what are the choices? You got pizza, what? Pizza, salad, we don't know what's for lunch, so
Probably a
the
chicken sandwich.
That's pizza.
Yeah, chicken sandwich. Okay, I'll get you a pizza.
pizza,
Yeah, pizza.
pizza with sweet tea.
What sides would you like?
Go get us some food. Alright, let me see. What was, Emily, what was the name of the English document that questioned torture?
Bill over.
Yeah, the English Bill of Rights. Liam, what did what did American courts rule in the late 1800s? Is that right? Alright, wasn't cruel and unusual. Okay, tell me about our two court cases. Sosa, you've already told us some, tell us some more. Furman said what? And Greg said what?
Furman. Can
Zach.
I get a hint? Just one word.
Well, you told us correctly that Furman said you couldn't do it, but why?
Discrimination.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so what does Greg say?
Not
You
discrimination.
can do it if you don't discriminate. That's right. Alright, Sammy, what was the governor of Illinois worried about?
Killing people who came out to be innocent.
That's right. And Meg, what kind of evidence being used?
The medicine might be not.
Not that. What kind of evidence being used in the cases now to make sure they're not
Oh wait, DNA?
DNA evidence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna look at you. Now, hey, everybody do this. Alright, so we're gonna predict. I'm gonna ask you how many of you for the death penalty. Write down, out of 12 people, write down the number you think is gonna raise your hand that's in favor of the death penalty. Alright, there you go. So we're predicting. And we're predicting, so what are you gonna use to predict? Well, use the fact, I'm gonna say, well, you wanna use the fact that everybody wanted to shut down Guantanamo. So I will say the number of people against the death penalty in here is gonna be higher than it would have been in the other class. So I've got a number in my head of people who I believe are gonna be in favor of the death penalty. Alright, everybody write down your number. Alright, I'm gonna write down my number. Whoever comes closest to the number gets the Jolly Rancher.
Wait, it's 12.
Yeah, out of 12. So 12 is the most number of
Drew's
people
not
that you.
even up.
Yeah, Drew's not here.
So it's 11.
11. Alright, how many people out of 11?
Unless you want. Oh, are you voting?
No.
Mr. McDade voted?
Mr. Medade, you voted?
No.
He's not voting. Okay. On your mark, get set. If you're for the death penalty, raise your hand.
Oh, shoot.
Dang.
My bad.
Wow. And did anybody put 1?
No, I put 4.
Yeah, I had 5.
God, 8.
Let me see it. So let me see. I'm getting independent verification from William. Look down there and see if he has one down
I
there.
scrolled it like before.
He's skeptical. He's skeptical. Man. Dang. All right. What do you think, Mr. McDade, for it or against it?
Let me guess.
Against it. Okay.
Most of us.
All right. Number next. All right. Whoops. All right. Anybody? We got a bunch of gun control stuff. I got Jolly Ranchers. What do you got?
The second amendment.
No.
Wait a minute, Sosa. Hold your horses.
The Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms to protect against government tyranny.
When does second protect the right to bear arms? False.
For the citizens,
No, and you got it
protect
wrong.
against
Not
government
quite.
Citizens.
I mean,
Who was it originally for?
Hunter.
Who originally had the right to bear arms? Militia. All right. Anybody else?
Civil liberties.
Tom? All right. Head
Brad
on.
Pitt was gun bill about the guy that got shot in the stomach, and then they did it for him. They used him as a representative. He was
I put 8
paralyzed.
down.
What the heck are you talking about?
The guy that got shot. It's in the front line.
Okay.
Oh, Brady. Oh, so you're telling me the Brady bill?
Yes.
Well, you want Jolly Rancher? That's right.
Now they have to check the firearm.
Our ideologies are so weird.
Well, thank you. You, cursing isn't against the law in all 50 states, right?
I would say that's correct. Obscenity, it's got to be something bad.
I was in law and justice class last period, and Coach Rice, the older Rice asked, is it against the law to curse? And I said no, and he was like, yeah, it is in all 50 states.
Well, maybe, I mean, you might have an old law on the books. You know, what was our example? We had Griswold, you know, you had a law against birth control that was on the books since 1849. So a lot of times there'll be a law that they never repeal. So that could be the case. You know, what the Supreme Court said was that the government had the power to regulate obscenity.
And
So I've never heard of a case of somebody getting arrested for saying that.
I hadn't either.
But it, you know, I don't dispute, you know, this law and justice class. He knows more about that than I do.
Well, he's.
I'm not disputing his.
I'm
That
not. I
could
wasn't
be
asking
okay.
you to. I was just asking your opinion to see if I. Right.
I would have said no, but you know, he may be right.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question when you come back.
Okay. Oh, I gotta stop recording. We're still being recorded. They'll record our lunch. We may be telling each other top secret information and then we get recorded. Let me see. So what do I do?